So good afternoon this time for everyone watching or listening or however you consume Trace Indy. But my guest today is Janice Fraser, and I'm really excited. So I've met her, like 3, 4, I don't even know, time is a construct nowadays with the pandemic. Let's say like 3 years ago, maybe,
yeah.
German mom version. And she's amazing and does amazing things. And she supports with, her dollar, but then she also goes really deep internally. And we're going to talk about all of those things. So Janice, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking.
Yay. So I want to give your bio because it's really cool. So you are an investor, a speaker, an innovation expert with 2 decades of experience spanning Silicon Valley, NASA, the Obama White House, and Fortune 500. So you have a very broad, I shouldn't even say just broad, but a really deep knowledge of, but really helping those in the community dig deeper and go broader and move faster, which I totally looked up some of your talks and they're amazing. But all of that, right? It's broad, but really fantastic. What would you say that you do?
Well, and actually that's a really interesting question because what I do changes. I mean, a long time ago, I was called a designer. Before that, I was an editor. And then I've been an executive and I've been like a leader and like all of these different names are true. I am an entrepreneur, I am an investor, but there's been this consistent through line. And we can talk more about that if you're interested in it, but the through line is that I sit really nicely at the very edge of the new thing that's changing how people are, but it's held by the special people, and I make it boring. And I make it so that regular people can do it. And I've done that repeatedly throughout my career. And I just really I believe that we all can participate in whatever this next new thing happens to be that is important, not frivolous. And I just want to help people do that, whatever that is. And so that's why I end up gravitating toward innovation. And as government tries to embrace innovation, what does that mean? How can you do that? How can you practice it regularly? Before that, it was entrepreneurship. How can regular people be entrepreneurs? Like, it doesn't have to be locked in Silicon Valley on Sand Hill Road. Like, I hate that sense of exclusivity, and I just want everyone to be able to play. So that's what I do.
But it's such a superpower to be able to say things, to the lay person, right? Of really bringing them along in whatever journey or that next step that is coming down that road. And that is a true superpower. I wish I had it. But with that, so how did you get there, right? And again, we've talked about this before this is a snippet. Those that watching also know this is a short little video, but, summed up, how did you get from point A to point G?
Well, the shortest answer is that I said yes to interesting opportunities.
I love that.
And it's just, so I am divorced, and my divorce happened a really long time ago. Like, I got that out of the way really early in life. So, and I knew the marriage was over when I told my now ex-husband. I've been with my current husband, by the way, for 25 years. So like, I did great in that transaction.
Yeah.
So I told my then first husband that I was going to work. I was leaving the magazine publishing industry, and I was going to work for this like crazy company called Netscape, which was for those who are too young, that was the internet browser, the first commercialized internet browser. Mm-hmm. And he told me I was crazy and that I shouldn't do it. And I was like, you don't trust my judgment. And he said, I really don't. And I was like, okay, well, there you go. Thank you for saying that out loud. And that made my career. Like, that gave me that jump into the unknown was just one of the first times that I started to just trust myself to make great decisions. And everything, I have goosebumps thinking about how joyous my career has been, because I just follow my instincts toward what I think is good and interesting and right and culturally meaningful and like all that stuff.
I feel like we have an entire conversation just about women learning to trust their instincts.
Yes, that's true.
That would be something I would listen to.
I will have that conversation any day.
So trusting your instincts, and you've gone through this incredible journey and been through, I've looked at your LinkedIn, I've seen your website. You've done really, really cool, powerful things, but where, the pandemic was hard for everybody. I mean, the pandemic was hard no matter what stage anyone's at, whether that's stay-at-home moms, whether that's working, I mean, anything. So I always like to ask, because this conversation started in a pandemic, which we're still in, but where do you find struggle and where are you finding that delight? Because I think it's important we start low, but we end high, even if it's still ongoing. But what has that been for you?
Well, so the highs and the lows in the last year and a half have been very high and very low, obviously, you know, and last year, 2020, I invested a lot of time, effort, money, care into awareness. I mean, Donald Trump was president and George Floyd was murdered and the world broke open. And I live in California and we had the wildfires were so bad that there was a day the sun didn't come up. So there were down times, but I found my delight in knowing that I could take action. Right. So my husband and I were having our 20th wedding anniversary, and we had been planning this massive family trip to France to celebrate with all our people in a house and a chateau, like blah, blah, blah. We canceled all of that, of course. And instead we bought a billboard in a Pittsburgh neighborhood where we needed to get out the, POC vote. And so we invested in an artist collective that was doing artist billboards made by people of color. And so we paid for the billboard. So so it's like this evanescent thing, but it brought me so much delight to know that I could, and this is a thing that women don't do. Women don't necessarily think, you're like, I have to plan my anniversary. Well, no, I have to buy a political billboard in a neighborhood where people need to feel permission to vote. And so that helped me to feel like I had power during a very powerless time. So that was part of 2020. The other thing I want to mention is that 2020 kind of broke me. And so January of this year, I realized that, like so many people who don't know it, I had something called complex PTSD. And complex PTSD comes from, in part, one way that you can get complex PTSD is that you're raised in a difficult home environment. And for all of those out there who have been raised in a difficult home environment, I want you to know you can live a glorious life and still be acting from a place of trauma. And what I didn't know, and what I have learned this year and dedicated this year to, is that trauma can be healed. And so if there's one message I want to share, it's that trauma creates neurological difference that actually can be repaired. So you can heal what I call the meat, right? And then you can reintegrate the traumatic memories so they don't carry forward and affect your behavior. And then you can do whatever cognitive behavioral therapy, whatever. But I didn't know until this year that trauma could actually be healed, not just treated. So depression, anxiety, all of those things that we take drugs for, it turns out a lot of that is a direct result of traumatic history. And traumatic history, we have new ways of managing neurology, and it can be fixed. And so I'm healing in deep and profound ways. And so if there's one message I want to get out to people this year, it's if you consider whether you might have trauma, and if you have trauma, know that you can be healed and that it's not fake and it's miraculous.
That's so amazing.
Right?
I would love when you, because it's ongoing work. So I hate sometimes when we say, when you come out the other side, or, when you've gone over, like, I know this is lifelong, this is going to go forever, this work. But I'd love to circle back at some point when that next chapter for you comes, because you do such important things. I'd love to circle back for that at some point.
For sure. But I want to say one thing. In an hour of EMDR or ART, you can resolve 10 years of trauma.
So tell us what, for those, I only know because I Googled it because I worked for someone that did EMDR, but can you say what that is?
EMDR is a neurological technique. So traumatic memories are stored in working memory, and that's why they continue to affect you and elevate emotions and all of that. And once those memories are reintegrated into the permanent long-term storage, they're no longer going to affect you the same way. It was developed for PTSD.
Yeah.
And complex PTSD is just PTSD of a different nature.
Okay.
And so all you need to do is loosen up your prefrontal cortex so that that frontal lobe can let go. And then you put the memories where they belong, and then you close it up and you're done. And it really is that magical.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
amazing.
I would love to say more about that some other time.
I love it because again, I know you've been doing this. It's August. I had to look at my thing. I'm like, where are we even at? August. So I know you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love. We're gonna do refreshers on some of the Trace Indie guests because people get so invested, and I get people slide into my DMs all the time and go, hey, how is X doing? Or how is this happening? And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful community. And so I think that's really important. Now, I love these two questions because I think that I shouldn't even say I think. I'm very excited and curious to know what you would say for these. So, Janice, how would you ask the community to show up?
So my ask is less for my own benefit.
Yeah.
I have two asks. One ask is that the community, if the community were to, do me one solid, it would be to remember that the racial justice movement is not over. Mm-hmm. That just because it's not the top of the news today doesn't mean that you don't need to keep showing up to end systemic systems of oppression. Mm-hmm. My particular care there is about mass incarceration. So I would say, please educate yourself about how mass incarceration is a racial justice issue. Mm-hmm. So that's thing one. And thing two is, please reach out to me if you want to know more about trauma. And if you want to know about some of these wild new treatments that are actually healing things so that I actually can imagine a future where I don't take antidepressants anymore.
Yeah.
Right. That I never thought that would be possible. So reach out to me if you're curious. I'd be happy to help.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. So always the big question. And I think if I had asked you a year ago versus asking you now, this would have a very, very different response. But, how are you leaving your trace?
That's a big question. How am I leaving my trace? Well, my trace is about reaching down and helping other people climb up, right? So my life has exceeded my wildest dreams many times over. And I think that it's the most important thing to share that and help others. And so I spend a lot of time with younger people, and I'll do a mentor or advisory call with anybody, anytime, young or old. And if I have something that's helpful, I'm glad of that. So that's how I'm leaving my trace.
I love that so much. Janice, I'm so thankful for your time. Just this little bit we had together, I'm really grateful. I'm going to share, obviously, a way for people to get in touch with you, and we'll link to Instagram and all those things. So I'm just really grateful for the time and just for the snippet with you, and just for you for sharing some of that journey with us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.